top of my We on? Okay, I am filling in as board chair until Shelby gets here. So I will call the meeting to order. Can we get roll call, please?
Mike Bullitt, William Beck,
Here.
Colleen Laudenbach, Allison Pint.
Here.
Shelby Poole, Greg Sand,
Here.
Carly Sherrill,
Here.
Jolene Squirrel, Joe Valentine.
Here.
Can I please get a volunteer to read the mission and vision?
I can do it. The mission of WLA is to utilize leadership-based programs and strategies grounded in solid research combined with the demonstrated success of core knowledge curriculum as a basis of a rigorous overall education program that builds strong skills in math, reading, literature, writing, music, science, and technology. The vision of WLA is to be a school where students and graduates become exceptional leaders and are prepared to take on the academic and leadership challenges that they will face in high school and beyond.
All right, so we're going to move to number 3 here, and if anyone would like to remove items from the consent agenda for discussion, please make that motion here. Otherwise, I will make a motion to approve the April board meeting agenda.
Second.
Here, a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against say nay. Any abstentions? All right. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none, there's no public comment, so we will move forward to item number 6. I do not have a board report, so Dennis.
You better be careful about doing too good a job here. They might try and graft you into the role in the future, so. Yeah, so 2 points of pride. I decided to add this, just thinking about what the superintendent report should be, continuing to reflect and again, keep giving me feedback, but I think it feels like it's been a lot of nuts and bolts, and I think it's important that we focus on things to be proud of. One thing that wasn't on the report that I just want to point out, especially with having Ms. Naif here, is we have 535 students to get through MCA math testing and MCA reading testing that we started last Tuesday, and we're down to 9 students that have one of the tests left to finish. I think it's just the whole effort of the whole team to make that happen, and to create a good testing environment that works for the students. And I mean, I've seen these things drag on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and so great job by a lot of people, particularly Megan, in terms of coordinating that. You know, you really can't share detailed specific results for the school as a whole until they're released in August. You know, in terms of anything specific, but we feel good about what we're seeing. We'll just say that. And so, yeah, that's a positive. The Apex Leadership Program that's really run through our PTO was a significant success. Not just because we raised a significant amount of money for the PTO to contribute to our outdoors, but was really impressed with the job they did in terms of involving students and their focus around leadership and the enthusiasm that we had in the building and energy we had in the building. Those days, I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical about whether it was worthwhile with the cut they take and so on and so forth, but to me, I saw more benefit than just the fundraising. I thought it was a maybe for a good 2 weeks of
School bonding.
yeah, just kind of school energy at a time of year when the school year starts to get long. So I found it to be a real positive and felt really, really good about the way the whole thing worked out. We had a 5th grade student qualify for nationals for archery through our archery program. and we'll be going to nationals in, I think they decided to go to the Louisville Nationals coming up in a few weeks here. McKinley Keiko is her name. So that's something we're certainly proud of. On, was it Tuesday or Monday this week, we had a flag football game. Went to our second ever flag football game. I came to the game, got there with about 2 minutes left in the game. We were losing 7-0. I saw 5 plays and we won 9-7. So
Nice.
I got there just at the right time. Saw interception, a touchdown run, safety, and the 4 or 5 plays I saw. So I told them, I don't know if they end up playing tonight with the weather. Did they?
Yep, they're at Fit Academy right now.
Okay.
I'm waiting for a score update.
Well, I told some of the students I saw today that unfortunately I have a board meeting, so I can't go tonight.
Yeah, I
You
know.
if you guys struggle tonight, then we're gonna know you need me there, so we'll see. Our meetings went on as usual this month. Our finance committee met, our governance committee met, our facilities committee met, the facilities committee actually did not meet in March. But I will talk a little bit about facilities and that we are, last month the board knows that we had a letter of intent that we, agreed to with another property for next year. Since then, that's gone to the lawyers back and forth between the two parties several times with the purchase agreement. And the things that are still being worked out are minor things like what happens if something falls through with the funding, and what part of the escrow do we get back? Just a few of the little things like that. We think it will be finalized by Monday, but we're close enough where I can talk a little bit about it now. And the idea is that we would have in the other facility our 8th, 9th, and 10th grade next year, with 7th grade through 12th grade ultimately being located there, and a lot of progress being made on the whole thing. The bond market's been really volatile since the tariffs were initially imposed, and to a point where the amount of money we would have to spend on the project has varied by as much as $1.5 million over the last 2-3 weeks, with the market fluctuating up and down, and how much it would cost. So there are some moving parts there that we'll need to keep, that will impact what our final project looks like. And the hard thing is, it's not like a house closing where, a house, you lock in an interest rate 60 days or 30 days out. With this, they go sell the bonds about a week before you close. And so, then you don't know 100% you can close until you actually are able to sell those bonds a week before. And you don't know what interest rate it will be until, that day. And so it does make us have to plan with plans A, B, and C in terms of what we actually have to spend on the whole project. You do have, the amount that's financed, you do have 3 years to spend that money. So if there's additional buildings attached to what we'd be purchasing or whatever, we have 3 years to do that. So you could wait until construction costs are a little right, or until, and target it. You don't have to be ready to move on it right away. So that's moving, but moving forward, and we feel good about it. We really feel good about the whole picture moving forward. As it shows here, we have, this was on Monday when we had 1,119 students enrolled for next year. We are now to a place where we have 1,127. So our target is 1,090 students, but we at this point over-enroll each class by 2 students. So, and the idea being that there's always students that we don't know are not coming back, or maybe they don't even know are not coming back yet. And you're better off having an extra 1 or 2 to start the year than ending up being short and to enroll students throughout the fall. It can make it really hard to build classroom culture. So it's almost impossible to get it where every class is exactly the number of students that you're targeting for the day of school. But we want to get as close as we can, but err on the side of being slightly over, so that, as there's some attrition throughout the year, we still remain full and our culture can kind of remain steady in classes. So, but we feel real good about where that's at. For context, we right now have 340 new students enrolled for next year. Last year, by the time we got to Thanksgiving, including students that were on our waiting list, it was 250. So, new students. So we're definitely doing well as far as that goes. We also are doing very well in terms of, under the human resources management. We'll talk more in depth. We have a little presentation on our hiring for next year, so I won't talk about it right now, but we're feeling really good about that too. Let's see, what else? Things continue to be on track financially and for this school year, and I think the other big thing is I've been, in terms of the communications piece, you've probably seen, if you're a parent or a teacher anyways, maybe not a community member, but I've sent about 3 communications regarding the transportation for next year, around adding buses, around what we need to do to change our drive line to make it work. On Monday, we intend to send out the survey to families where they will select bus, drive line, and if they're choosing drive line, are we doing window, the blue window, the orange window, the late window, lane A, lane B, walk up. And it's just a lot of logistics are going into it because we know that the system we have right now will not work with 200 more students. And we need to get things a little more spread out from a traffic flow, from a safety, and even from for the city to approve a conditional use permit for additional space that has to be solved. And we met with them and they're very happy with our plan. So I've responded to, we've had links in a couple of the communications for families to give feedback and ask questions. We've had about 50 families submit questions or comments. I've been responding to each of them with a personal email, trying to address each issue, and from that, starting to build a document of frequently asked questions from all those questions that will be part of what we have in the future and on our website. So I think that covers the range of update items. Any questions or anything you want me to expand on, follow up on? All right. You want to turn things over?
Okay. I'm guessing that was 6-2? All right, so we'll move on to 6-3. Jolene is not here. I can read, if I can get it to open. Our executive summary. Average daily membership, original budget 847, working budget 880, actual enrollment 881. The school's originated budgeted surplus in general fund for the year is $233,463. The school is budgeting to spend $5,000 out of the community service fund, a projected cumulative fund balance of $2,594,732, or 25% of expenditures at fiscal year end. The school's working budget is projecting a surplus of $255,865 at fiscal year end, which would result in an ending fund balance of $2,618,314, or 23% of total expenditures. Projected days of cash on hand is 74 days. This is above the 45 days and meets minimum bond covenants. Projected debt service coverage is estimated to be 1.26. Should the school bond in fiscal year 26, the required debt service coverage ratio will be required to be at least 1.2. If bonding is not completed, the debt service coverage ratio will need to be 1.1 to satisfy bond requirements. As of month end, 75% of the year is complete. Cash balance as of the reporting period is $1,716,323 and is down $1,792,478 in the previous month due to regular processing of transactions as well as an increase in regular operating expenditures in this period. Revenues received at the end of the reporting period, 72.9% of the working budget. Expenditures dispersed at the end of the reporting period, 71.1% of the working budget. Other items, the fiscal year 25 original budget was approved at the May 24 board meeting. The fiscal year 25 working budget is being reviewed by Creative Planning and Administration at WLA for appropriate revisions and adjustments based on enrollment and actual expenditures. The fiscal year 26 original budget process has begun and will be presented to the Finance Committee and Board of Directors. Any questions or comments? The Finance Committee met on Wednesday, April 16th, virtually at 4:30. We had the mission vision. We reviewed financial statements for March, discussed the fiscal year 26 budget model projections. We discussed transportation proposals, and we adjourned at 5:04 p.m. I would make a motion to approve the financial and supplemental report and the Finance Committee report.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Turn it over to Joe for our governance.
Yeah, so Governance Committee met on Thursday, April 10th at 5 o'clock. We discussed further the 400 series review, so we specifically policy 413. We were looking for some clarification on both policies 413 and 417, just with some of the verbiage in policy to make sure we have the right person that's with those titles that are mentioned in those policies. So I think we'll need to follow up on that at the next meeting, specifically Human Rights Officer, and then also to confirm if a chemical use team is currently implemented or not. We also discussed, related to policy 806, but possible mental health protocol addition, and a need to determine like what that plan would be. And again, we're going to get some follow-up on that, report back at the next meeting next month. Policy 538, with the final approval that was sent to Cassie for posting to the website, so that's probably updated now. We talked about some sample policies with the gift giving policy, specifically around that. We found a few schools that have some possible starting points for us to go off of, so we might create a draft with that. I think Nicole was going to actually bring that to the admin meeting and discuss some of that. And
we did.
Awesome.
Her and I met.
Oh,
and had some
perfect.
feedback.
Awesome,
About,
yeah.
And let me just, not to interrupt, but
No, go.
I just need to apologize. I missed the governance committee meeting this month.
Yeah.
And it was just a total accident on my part.
Oh, okay.
So I just apologize to the governance
The
committee.
flag football team went, so we'll let it slide.
Okay. So that did kind of leave you guys with a few things you needed to forward, if you
Yeah.
had questions about. I did meet with Nicole, and we'll forward a memo, of our conversation, try to address some of the things.
Perfect, yeah. Yeah, we were just, most of those were with, do we either have that person or that process, or do we need to change the policy to make sure we matched up correctly with those items, with some of those other follow-up items was kind of what we were looking at that, so, yeah, perfect. So then we also discussed the facility naming policy, which was also part of that discussion, I think that was brought, and some other examples that we had found. The other big news item, and unfortunate, we tried to talk him out of it, but Rich did send his communication that he would be stepping down, and that is actually an item on our board agenda here too. Future discussion will further review the 400 series and annual policy reviews, cheating policy, policy 540 with physical education uniforms. I think we're gonna try to get some more clarification on that from the PE teachers. New student journalism policy, new library material policy, the possible mental health protocol addition into policy 806, and then gifted and talented. And we're scheduled to meet again on Thursday, May 8th, at 5 o'clock again. Does anybody have any other comments, questions, or anything else with governance? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve the April governance meeting minutes.
Second.
I do want to say too, again, second, let's have discussion before you vote.
Sorry.
No, you did right. I'm saying, I think technically it's supposed to be motion, then second, then discussion
Okay,
before you vote.
yeah.
I think it's the right
Yeah.
order. Allison and I had some conversation this week about, where some of our policies come from, how they originated. And typically when you're doing, the governance is doing the policy review, you're reviewing policies that are already in place. And the only time you're really looking at new policies is if a board member thinks there's a policy missing that they want to bring forward, or somebody brings it forward that you want to talk about, or if there's new legislation that requires new policies. And when there's new legislation that requires new policies, the Charter School Association does a good job of sending those forward and making us aware of those. So I don't think those usually slip through. But one of the things that can come up is, without knowing the origin sometimes, you don't know if it was created by using a model Minnesota School Board Association policy, or if whoever was on the board predating all of us just kind of took one from another school and made it into ours, and may or may not have been reviewed by attorneys and so on and so forth.
So new policies should be reviewed by attorneys?
Well, the new policies, the charter school already has done that. It's more a matter if we're reviewing things, the discussion we had was, would it make sense for us to join the school board association? That gives us access to all the model policies out there. That's about like $4,000 a year. And I don't know if we would use it for anything else. So I'm feeling like it's a big chunk of money, but I'm also feeling like I don't know sometimes when we're reviewing these policies, if it's where it's come from, and if it, has been reviewed by attorneys and all of those pieces. So I'm just putting that out there, that we had that discussion, and I've just been trying to think about, is it worth that pretty significant expense? But I'm not sure how else we do it to make sure that we are covered. I don't know.
Can we do it for a short time, just to see that what we have is up to snuff, and then?
You can do it for a year, and print out everything we have on there, potentially.
What else do we get from that, other than the policies?
I feel like so much of the other pieces that come with it are really more tailored to traditional school districts. There's a lot of trainings that board members can go to in these different phase trainings, but they're not
Conferences.
Yeah, but they're not charter school focused the way, a lot of the charter school trainings we do are. And I think, but I guess I need to probably do more research to find out what else. I'm basing it on my experience having been a school board member in a traditional district.
Sure.
And what I remember about that from, my goodness, 16 years ago now. So,
I think there's also legal, they provide our school with lawyers, and they make sure that we, have the, legal ramifications and whatnot. But yeah, there are some things that are offered, but I didn't know if there was already something else that is covering us, right? So we might already have some of those things from a different organization that we may belong to or whatever,
Right.
like VOA or whatever. So, are we double dipping when it comes to that?
and that's part of what I'm trying to figure out. When I looked at the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools, it seems like they give policies when there's new legislation. They don't necessarily have all the policies covered out there. It's more, what I was able to find was, they send us the stuff when we have new legislation. I think we're getting too in the weeds. This is maybe even a governance committee discussion, but I think everybody on the board understanding how policies are made and reviewed and where they come from is significant. It really shouldn't be us just kind of, well, this is what I think should be the policy. I mean, legal ramifications and of so many of the things that, so it just might be something that we do a little more digging out, but we'll look at that.
I did a policy audit, so to speak, at the school that I'm working at this summer, and I printed off all of the free resources from MSBSA, and went through like recommended policies, required policies, checked to see what we had, got rid of some of the policies that were outdated or just not needed or not relevant. So it is something that you can do within. And then there are schools that I know are part of the MSB. And so I just went and printed all of their policies, and then I like did a side-by-side of our school policy versus their policy, and we suggested edits to the governance of anything that was different. So if someone wants to put in that work, it is doable. But it did take me a good 3 weeks of, I mean, you're reading about 100 policies word for word and mirroring your own and making sure it does or doesn't fit. So.
And I've also done that on the governance committee at another school that I was at, so
Yeah.
that's kind of how our process is.
And when I was on the governance committee, that's very much what we did, was we went and pulled up the ones that we knew were from the boards that paid for it, and we checked them side by side as we went through them. So for at least the last however many years I was on governance, 3, 4, I don't know, it's been a long time now. Any policies that we amended or reviewed are compliant with what is the suggested policy, so to speak. So.
They also provide in-district workshops, which could tie into one of our conversations later today in terms of mutual expectations between board and district leaders, board self-evaluation, superintendent evaluation, negotiation seminars probably don't play so much for us. They're what they call their phase trainings are what I think we kind of hit in a different way with the school charter school training. But they have a training that's called Learning to Lead, School Board Basics, and then they have one that's School Finance and Management, and building a high-performance school board team, representing your community through policy and engagement. But again, they tend to be predominantly traditional school districts, and I think the differences are big enough that you end up spending a lot of time on things that maybe are less relevant in our world. So, more to come. So you made a motion.
There's been a motion and a second. And this is just to approve the April governance meeting minutes. I think we need to do a separate motion for Rich's resignation, is that right? Okay, so there's been a motion and a second to approve the April governance meeting minutes. Is there any other conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And then the second one, yeah, is a motion for Rich Washington stepping down from governance committee chair in June.
I'll second that. Is he intending to stay on the committee and just not be chair, or he's stepping off completely?
He's stepping off completely,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Mike is not here. Ben, Jonas, do either of you have the facilities committee report or anything you want to share?
I kind of shared the report
Okay.
in what we did. I will say we, for some of the work we're being done, we did have a request for a proposal and got 3 bids back. And we'll be evaluating those and determining which company to use.
Yeah.
And
The other piece that we discussed and we talked a little bit about that Jonas hasn't covered quite yet is facility usage in our 2 current buildings and the need to add additional rooms and where those rooms could go. And so we've had some people come in to kind of look at and kind of lay out some plans, and we believe we have a plan moving forward to add the number of rooms that we need to that is both cost-effective and efficient. And so those discussions kind of went forward as well.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe we should make, Kathy, if you make a note to make that an agenda item for next month, probably for both this facility and I assume we'd be able to share those plans for the facility we're hoping to obtain by that point too, but for sure we can share for this facility. What changes we'd be making for next year.
Mr. Broderick, would you like to present anything as the middle school and high school principal?
Cool, I can definitely do that. I'm gonna stand up here at this little podium here for a minute. First off, I did get a score update. Our Owls, our flag football team, our 6 through 8 team, these are cool jerseys.
Nice.
Kind of see,
Cute.
Nice.
cute is what we are going for.
Years.
Not anything like that cute. They just wrapped up their game in the rain with Fit Academy. We prevailed 14-7. We're now 2-1, and we're ranked number 3 in our division. So a lot of fun. They're having a lot of good building that's going around that football team, and people cheering for them up here, and kind of building that culture. So I got the opportunity to kind of take a position that I've held in the past, which is middle school, and now added on to high school principal. And so I was thankful to kind of step into that role. What we've really been focusing on is first kind of reestablishing culture, the way that we want it to be when we're on third floor, and how we want to be interacting with one another. And it's really beneficial because I was with these students in years past, right? So I started with WLA 6 years ago as the middle school dean of students, and I've been able to be with these students as they've kind of gone forward. So it's kind of like a refresher for all of us. They know what to expect from me, I know what to expect from them, and then we're kind of getting to know each other once again. So we started with our celebrations from second trimester, kind of going through honor rolls, going through our athletics and activities, and really celebrating what they have accomplished so far. And then we're building into third trimester. There's been a couple pieces that we've been really refreshing on to try and make sure that we're meeting all of our expectations and that we're doing what we need to do as middle and high school students. So we've been really looking at making sure we're coming to class prepared. We're really looking at kind of taking accountability for our own work that we're turning in, and making sure we're doing some semi-regular grade checks with students to kind of give them the proper skills to kind of move forward in their education. So some things that we're really kind of doing there. The other piece that we're working on is we're working on plans for next year. So we've been working on scheduling and how that's going to look with the hopes of having a new facility. How are those spaces going to integrate? And what if we were to start over tomorrow, start our school year fresh, what type of things would we want to integrate immediately that we've learned through this process this year? And so that's conversations with both staff and students, because I do think it's very valuable to talk to our students now and see what they believe is going good and what they believe could be better. And so we've been having some really good conversations. But it's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun. So any questions any of you have about what life's like as a middle high school student WLA?
I think I already know what that's like.
Yeah. Torture, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. Anything else? Okay. Short and sweet.
Good job. He must know the NFL draft is on TV tonight.
I heard some people wanted to watch that.
That's me.
All right, it is election season. We do have some open seats for election this year, so community member seat, which I believe is mine, is open.
It's actually Mike's.
Oh, that's Mike's is open from 2025 to 2028. Teacher seat is Jolene's from 2025 to 2028, and then parent seat,
Is Greg, which is just because you took over that seat, so you
the
have
empty seat.
rerun.
Have
Yeah.
to run again?
Yeah.
Get your campaign shoes on.
See you fill those.
Approve this message.
So the Board of Directors governs the school by setting the expectations and parameters that lead to higher levels of student achievement. Among other things, the board is responsible for compliance reporting, strategic goal setting, evaluating our school's executive director, and overseeing the finances of the school. Service on the Board of Directors is an opportunity to provide leadership to an outstanding educational organization. While board service requires a generous commitment of time, talent, and skills on behalf of WLA, this is balanced by the reward of serving with other dedicated individuals to ensure WLA's continued success as a public charter school. Anyone who is interested should possess a passion for WLA's mission and vision, a desire to strengthen our school community, an ability to contribute in a positive, collaborative manner, previous experience in strategic planning and implementation, finance, marketing, communications, legal, and/or education is beneficial but not required. You can find more information at our website, and self-nomination forms are due by May 23rd at 5 p.m. Anything else I need to put out there? So if there are anyone you know that is interested, Mike doesn't intend to run again, so if anyone knows anyone in the community, I think the requirement is just that you have to be a resident of Minnesota. You don't have to be a resident of Woodbury or of our parameters. So if any of you know anyone out there who is interested,
For the community position?
yeah. Yep.
And the community position, really, anybody who's a resident in the state of Minnesota is eligible. But you can't be joining meetings through virtually, we have to attend in
Yeah.
person.
Right.
Yep.
So,
I know a couple of people I can ask.
Teacher seats.
but it sounds like, Cassie, you talked to Jolene today.
Yeah, she said she's done a good 8 years. She thinks she's ready to move on. Life is getting busy. If you really, really, really need someone or want her to stay, she would consider. But she's kind of ready to let someone else take over.
Jonas, Allison, I don't know which one of you it would be more appropriate for to send an email out to staff and let them know that we have a position open.
I think Cassie usually does.
You do?
right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can. A communication just went out a few
Perfect.
minutes ago about it, but I can type up something personally just for staff.
You sent out, was it for parents or was it the one you sent out kind of for all of them?
I think it went out to all stakeholders,
Okay.
so staff and the
Okay.
families. But I can send one out too.
That should be good.
I do know that in the newspaper last weekend, the Star Tribune article that was fairly critical of at least some charter schools. One of the things that was brought up was that number of charter schools that really haven't had any elections. Not because, a lot of cases where it's just been, there's never been more than one candidate, or they've had a hard time filling seats. But the criticism, and a lot of times that came from authorizers, was, did the school do a good enough job promoting it and, getting it out there for people to know that they can do this and to get a diverse group of people involved, so it's not just, it's not just a tight group of people that are on there forever that don't have diverse, thinking and
Maybe I can stop it at a PLC and mention it to teachers, and then I can also send an email too.
yeah. And I think it's particularly things that, having it on our website, having that email, documenting those things, so if we're, I'm guessing that typically when those things happen, then the authorizers will look for more evidence that the schools are doing it, so we'll probably get VOA asking for more evidence this year than the previous years that we've, of evidence that we've done a good job promoting for board members. So things that, the emails and the things that go out and what we post on the website, we should try and keep in a file and add to our VOA portfolio.
I assume what you sent out, that probably hit Parent Square too, right? So,
Yeah.
'cause, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably on your phone right now.
For the community seat, I know a lot of like bigger companies encourage and or require some of their higher ups to serve and volunteer in things. My last school before where I'm at now we had someone from General Mills always that would run for our board, and one other one. So I don't know, we were lucky to have Mike and Rich both from 3M, but I don't know if it's worth, Mike might have a connection of someone to reach out to at 3M to see if they have anyone who's interested in finding volunteer hours.
Is there a donor or contributor or potential contributor corporation that we already have that we could get somebody from their board? You know, because it kind of makes sense if say 3M, if somebody like if 3M donated to us every year, whatever it would be in their interest to have somebody, you know, who'd be willing to come up here and hang out for a couple hours once a month.
Yeah.
You know, because that connection will help them make, you know, further contributions as well.
Yeah.
I was thinking Jason, but he might be a little too close to the.
Conflict of interest.
Well, because we're contracting with them, I think that might become a conflict of
it would be
interest.
conflict, right?
Yeah.
So, he may know somebody, I think there'd be a conflict with that part of it. The other thing is, one of the things that we've been talking about more and more is, as we're expanding our middle school and high school and really trying to grow activities, but also really trying to grow our music and arts part, that in a community board member, somebody who's got a connection to the performing arts, maybe also be able to help us bring perspective to our board too, and how to build that, so that might be something going.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, everybody can network, and typically, my experience is a lot of people will say, you know, well, if nobody else wants to run, I'll do it. But really, we kind of for demonstrating that we're trying to have that involvement and have the kind of, be good for us to have some contested elections in that regard.
I'm going to reach out, probably not tomorrow, Friday's not a good day for lawyers. But I'm going to reach out Monday to Lindell McMillan. I don't know if you guys have heard that name, but he's the executor over the Prince Estate in Paisley Park. And Prince used to donate a lot of money to music programs in different schools. He just didn't do it outwardly where people know about it. But if I reach out to Lindell and tell him what we're doing and what we're looking to do, we may be able to form some kind of alliance between our school and Paisley Park with respect to kids learning stuff when they get their band thing together, when they go out and perform at Paisley, or, you know, just a way to bring that, because music is a big deal in the state of Minnesota, right? So, and you don't get any bigger than Prince. So
No, you don't.
maybe I could try to work that out. I'll work on that. That's a fun project.
I don't know if this form has to go through governance, but it does still say executive director. Okay,
Change it.
you can just do it. Okay, cool.
Good deal.
All right, turn it over to Megan.
Should I sit here or should I go to the podium?
Whatever you're most comfortable with.
Okay, I'll stay here. For those of you that don't know me, I am Megan Nath, the curriculum coordinator. I've been with WLA for 8 years. I started off as a teacher here and have been in this position for 3 years. Today I'm going to talk about the core knowledge diagnostic visit that took place here at the end of November, and we got a report back in December. I have shared the findings of this diagnostic report with teachers and the administration here. We've already kind of put some plans in motion, so I'm excited to share those plans with our stakeholders. The purpose of the diagnostic visit was to kind of push WLA closer to reaching that distinction status that's a part of one of our strategic goals. Reaching distinction status is something that we've been working on as an organization for at least 7 years. It's a big undertaking, and it's something that would just kind of be like a stamp of approval from the Core Knowledge Foundation, and it would set us up to be like a school where they send people to us to like view how we're running things. We'd be kind of like a shining example in their community as well, and that is across the country, so that'd be really, really great. This diagnostic visit was also an opportunity for us to create a relationship with the foundation. I communicate with them often about like purchasing curriculum, but this was a chance for them to actually come and get into our building, meet our students, meet our staff, and our administrative team, and start to form like a strong relationship with some of the people from their foundation. And I think that this diagnostic visit was really successful in that way. Kathy Kinter is the person they sent out to do the diagnostic visit, and she really has a soft spot for WLA. She actually started to get like teary-eyed in her talk with me, just kind of reviewing some of the things she saw in our building about how we just have something really special here. And she's excited to continue to work with us in our goals and some of the changes that we're making to reach that distinction status. So I think that this visit was a great first step towards that. The diagnostic visit also helped strengthen our understanding of what we still need to do to reach that distinction status, what their expectations are for us to reach that status, and kind of where we're at with that. And then also just to clarify our path to reaching that status, like what we're going to do next. So the feedback they gave us was about a 35-page document that was very detailed in all of her visits. During her time here, it was a 2-day visit. She did go into every grade level and observed every subject and into some of our specialist rooms too. She got to see a variety of veteran teachers and new staff to WLA, and even just new teachers their first year teaching at WLA. So I think she got a good idea of kind of where we're at and where we can continue to grow. The feedback that we got was based off of these five constructs that I have listed on the slide: collaborative planning with the 4 C characteristics of core knowledge, effective teaching practices, domain-based instruction, the core knowledge approach to ELA and math, and then strong leadership. So when we're thinking about that core knowledge school of distinction status, they're not just evaluating us on using the core knowledge curriculum, it's also how well we are implementing that in our school. So that first construct, the collaborative planning with the 4 characteristics of core knowledge, one of those 4 characteristics is about cross-curricular activities. That's kind of like one of the really big constructs of core knowledge. And she was able to observe in many of our classrooms that from grade to grade, students are interacting with one another because they're working on similar projects and content area. And then she also observed in our specialist classrooms some of that cross-curricular. Specifically in her report, she mentioned music and going into the music room, and it was something students were familiar with from their content area class, and being able to engage in that was really great for her. She also made comment on specifically how well our K through 5 teachers collaborate. One of the other constructs of that collaborative planning with the 4 characteristics is that teachers are delivering the same content with the same level of rigor to their students in all the different classrooms. And at WLA, we've created our schedules specifically in K-5 to make sure that those students are getting the same type of information delivered at the same time of day. So that really, like, any classroom she walks into, those teachers are gonna be almost at the exact same spot in their lesson. So really being able to replicate and ensure that our students are getting, equal access to all that content. And then she also mentioned she did go into our middle school as well. And because our middle school is still newer, and especially newer to adopting like the core knowledge curriculum, we've been using the sequence since we first adopted middle school and opened our middle school, but the curriculum that they are releasing is relatively new in our adopting within the last couple of years. It's still a work in progress with the collaboration and planning and getting that strong cross-curricular planning with teachers from different content area. So that's one of the things that we'll continue to work on. The second construct we were evaluated on was effective teaching practices. Maintaining similar pacing among grade levels in kindergarten through 5th was observed. That's what I had mentioned about she was able to like walk into one first grade classroom and then walk out and walk into another, and it was like she was like it was almost like picking up like where I left off, which is something that I think makes WLA very unique, and probably people don't know that that's not what it's like in most other schools. So I think that's something that makes us special.
I would second that. Patrick and I both, being new to the school this year, have been amazed how consistently that happens. We walk into one room next to it, and it's not just the same lesson, they're almost the same place in the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that when I first, Cassidy was showing me the school before Kingston came here.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every room we went to, I could almost recite what they just said a minute ago, because they were all kind of...
That in a lot of ways, Patrick talked about, we did about kind of the secret sauce of WLA being the common prep with teachers, but I think it goes beyond the common prep. It's the extent to which our teachers are invested in collaboration. And when you're putting 5, 6 teachers together collaborating and planning on what's happening today around the already rich curriculum, that's special. And she knows that, so that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what she did notice, and is really the basis behind core knowledge, is giving students the same background knowledge that they need to be able to use those skills and background knowledge to integrate into later grade levels. So teachers all teaching the same thing at the same time, at the same pace in all of our classrooms and all the grade levels is giving students that same strong foundation of knowledge as they move forward. On the teacher survey, so there were 3 surveys that were sent out, 1 to the admin team, 1 to teachers, and then 1 to families, actually, in anticipation for this diagnostic visit. And on that teacher survey, teachers indicated that they facilitate discussions with students by using turn and talk, whole group discussions, small group opportunities, projects, open-ended, like so many different strategies. But one thing that she mentioned was that mostly whole group discussion, small group, and partner learning was what was most noticeable. So she didn't notice all of the techniques that were used in there, and predominantly teacher to student discussion. So why that's important in this finding of these effective teaching practices is just for our teaching staff to be able to note that's what we're using the most and what was observed the most, so we can continue to be conscious about that and integrate even more successful strategies. The domain-based approach is super important. That's that cross-curricular integration of subjects and content matter within our grade level instruction. So specifically, teachers start by teaching like CKLA, which is our core knowledge language arts program, which is already cross-curricular in all of our grade levels. So in language arts, they're going to be learning history and science topics. But then most of our grade levels have also allotted time in their day to again go back to that, like a history and geography portion of their day or science portion of their day, where they maybe have learned about that topic in language arts class already when they're practicing their reading and writing skills, and then they'll go later in the day and they'll dig deeper into that and do some type of extension learning. So that was noticed in that domain-based approach. And yes, also vocabulary and effective communication and comprehension skills is important with core knowledge. That's one of their foundational beliefs. And she said that she did notice that teachers have those things posted in their hallways. It was used during the lessons, but would love to see students engaging in more organic conversation using that vocabulary. So that's something that we'll continue to work on. The fourth construct was the core knowledge approach to language arts and math. This was pretty easy to attain in language arts because we use the core knowledge language arts curriculum, kindergarten through 8th grade here, so we have that approach pretty easily by just our curriculum adoption. Math was also seen to be, from her observations, was seen to be using that core knowledge approach. And then I thought it was interesting, 69.4% of teachers surveyed said they always or mostly follow the scope and sequence of CKLA, while 60% indicated they do not supplement CKLA with other programs. So what that means is that about 70% of our staff right now on this survey indicated that they are using core knowledge, CKLA, with fidelity, which is something that in our feedback report was a topic that we'll continue to work on in trying to reach that distinction status. The fourth construct was strong leadership. So she did spend a couple different meetings with our leadership team here at WLA. 93.1% of teachers polled responded that core knowledge was a central guiding instructional program here at Woodbury Leadership Academy, which I think is really important when we're talking about WLA itself, as that's part of our founding mission and vision. The administrative team showed strong enthusiasm about core knowledge, so that was evident. And 74% of our teachers said that they felt supported by me, the curriculum coordinator, in their implementation of the core knowledge curriculum and rated me as effective or highly effective. So what I take from that is that there are 26% of our staff that did not feel that way. And that gives me a chance to reflect on how I can continue to support them. Maybe they...
One of the unfortunate things, I think, is that the data was not broken down by K-5 and 6-9. Because anecdotally, my perception, and the perception of others I talked to, is that we're much closer, the numbers are much higher at the elementary than the middle, because the middle is newer.
Yep.
And because we've had more turnover in our middle school staff, so there's not a lot of teachers that have been here a number of years in the middle school at this point. And that's one of the things that we're really working on in a variety of ways. But what's interesting is that with the state of Minnesota, all of our data in the past has been K-8, or like the MCA 3-8. And now for next year, we're broken down into K-5 being its own school, elementary, and the middle being its own school. So if we really are further along at the elementary in a lot of these things, we might be more likely to obtain school distinction status for our elementary school, and these numbers might be a little bit different if it's just elementary school. But we don't really know because...
Almost also more like specialists, like gym, is it core knowledge? So
Exactly.
Yeah, but so are other specialists. Art and music really are.
They are.
Well,
Yeah,
integrated
it's completely cross-curricular, and they go as far as vertically aligning like their pacing to what the grade levels are doing in our curriculum map. So that they're trying to hit that either right after or during that lesson for when units when students come into their class. So yeah. An impressive 97.5% did respond that they have all the necessary resources to effectively teach core knowledge, which I think is really great. That means our teachers have everything that they need in their hands to deliver it. So our recommended next steps by Kathy Kinter. The first was that teachers must maintain high expectations for all students in their classroom and hold all the students accountable for their learning. Talking to our teaching team, we think that this kind of just comes down to like setting grade level appropriate expectations for behavior during instruction. So really getting down into the details of like what does instruction look like in the classroom, and specifically grade level expectations for that, because we know that what first grade learning looks like is going to look very different than what high school learning looks like or middle school learning. And then gain clarity on appropriate modifications and accommodations for students with 504s or IEPs, so that we're maintaining high expectations but also supporting our students in the best way possible. Achieve complete stakeholder buy-in. This was in our feedback, that specifically in the parent survey feedback that we got back, that parents don't have a strong understanding that their students are learning core knowledge. And really what we think that is that we're not using the word core knowledge in our communication. Like when we're talking at conferences or when we're sending out weekly newsletters, a lot of times us as teaching staff will just say CK, and I don't think we necessarily know what that means. So using the word core knowledge very purposely, I think is going to be an easy way to kind of bridge that gap. We will continue to host a minimum of 2 community events per grade level that showcase our student learning. Some of you might, or maybe you're thinking right now, like, we already do 2 community events minimum. Those could be things that are just showcasing what our students already learned. So a project that they present, or our 3rd grade does a Roman party at the end of their unit and inviting our parents in to come be a part of that, or sending pictures of that. And then provide new staff with monthly core knowledge implementation support sessions. Will be important in getting new staff to buy into core knowledge, because it definitely is different than anything. The curriculum itself is different than what is taught at a lot of teacher prep programs. So when new staff come on board, it takes them a second to adjust. But once they really have a strong understanding of the foundation of core knowledge, we usually see a really strong buy-in on that. And then finally, use all of the components of our curriculum with fidelity. Really, this is just something, fidelity kind of starts to fade away after years and years of teachers using the curriculum and picking things they like, and then disregarding things that maybe they don't feel like they have wall space for. Or they don't have time to do. So just going back to the basics and reviewing and bringing some of those things back into our classroom. So probably you're wondering, and I went through so much information, and you probably were just like, how close are we to distinction status? This year, we are already planning to make shifts in our instruction, and we plan to attend the Core Knowledge Foundation Conference to demonstrate our commitment. Having that strong relationship with the foundation will be really important. Next year, we'll implement these changes and reevaluate ourselves in the spring on kind of where we're at. I'll continue to stay in contact with the foundation, Kathy Kinter, for support. And then in fall of 2026, we'll decide if we wanted to schedule another diagnostic visit. Jonas had mentioned, like, from this diagnostic visit, what we found out is we are very close, K-5. Really, it's just like that stability. With so much growth and so many new teachers because of that growth, it takes a while for them to adjust and feel really strong in their implementation of core knowledge. So once we feel like we feel strong, I think applying for status K-5 is in our near future. So we'll make that decision then.
But keep in mind, there are 7 core knowledge schools of distinction in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the fact that we've been working on this for a long time, and even if it takes us another 3 years, or, I mean, it's an aspirational thing that they don't give out easily, and they take weight. There's been a number of schools that were schools of distinction that have lost that status.
Yeah, you do have to keep.
You really have to keep it. And so Megan mentioned the Core Knowledge Conference in June. So I'll actually send a link to all the board members here just so you can check out what it is. But it's the first time they've had this conference in 10 years. but the leadership part of it is an important strand, and we haven't signed up yet, but I think we probably need to send a team to the conference to demonstrate our commitment to it. And I point that out to the board because generally, I don't think it's a wise use of taxpayer dollars to be going to conferences all over the country kind of thing. There's enough trainings you can do online, enough local, enough things like that. And I don't particularly relish going to Orlando in June and almost July anyways, but I do think if our goal is to be a school of distinction, we need to immerse ourselves in the things that Core Knowledge Foundation offers, and I'd like to send some teachers too. We just have to see, been kind of waiting to sign up to see how much we have left in our budget at the end of the year to make sure we don't go over budget and something. But I just want to point that out because that might be something as a board member providing oversight, you're like, why do we really need to go to a conference in Florida? And I think this has been a primary goal of the board for a long time, and I think it would be an important step, even symbolically, not to mention the conference really does look like it's really powerful. And even just reading the sessions online and thinking about things we can work with the teachers and so on and so forth. So I do think it will have impact, but I just want to point that out and point out that I don't think that should be a regular practice of ours, is going to out-of-town conferences when there's so many different ways to training. Yeah.
As a parent of the kid in the school, help me understand. So, core knowledge versus STEM, right? Is this school a core knowledge school, or are we trying to get to be one, or is it we're trying to get the distinction status?
Yeah, we're working towards the distinction status. So we are a core knowledge school in the sense that we are using all core knowledge curriculum.
Okay.
And we are following the sequence with fidelity. So our students are immersed in that from K through 8.
See, I didn't know that. I just knew I liked the school, and Kingston did too.
See, but the fact that you didn't know that, not on you, on us.
That's
on me, 'cause I was excited.
No, but that's something we should fix. If we're gonna be a core knowledge school of distinction, every parent in our school should be able to tell you what core knowledge is and why it makes our school different.
Right.
And so that information, that's probably a survey thing we need to include in the survey we do with families this spring. And that's information that, you know, if that's true for a lot of families, which I suspect it is, by the way, it tells me that we have work to do. Even if we're doing a great job with the core knowledge in the classroom, we need to do a much better job of educating our families. I think they get the information when they first enroll, and then probably don't necessarily hear, when they are hearing about it, they're just thinking core knowledge is the name of the textbook company, or, you know.
Thanksgiving of this past year, I was with a group of family friends, and one of the women there was talking about a charter school they're starting in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and they were using core knowledge, and she asked me what system we were using. I thought it was STEM. She said, you should really look into trying to get it to go to core. And I'm hearing this now, I'm like, we're already there. I had no idea. So yeah,
that's
that's
only,
exciting.
as far as I know, there's only a handful of schools in Minnesota that use core knowledge. I know my daughter goes to college at Colorado State. She's student teaching right now at a school in Fort Collins that is core knowledge. But one of the schools of distinction is called Liberty Common, which their principal's been here multiple times. And you know, last spring before I even started, I went and visited that school to learn more about core knowledge, and good excuse to visit my daughter and so on and so forth. But one of the things I noticed when I was out there recently was I'm looking at the public schools, and you see all these public schools starting to have core knowledge in their name. And it's because the charter school there, the core knowledge school distinction, that has been so successful that now all the traditional school districts are starting to try and adopt the same curriculum.
Right.
And that really was the idea of charter schools when they started in Minnesota in the 1990s, was that you could pilot things and do things at charter schools and see what worked, and then they can be adopted wider. And I really saw that out there. But in Minnesota, the only schools I know of are a handful of other charter schools that use core knowledge. So it's interesting, it's another one.
Great, we got to tell my wife.
Should it be like I just pulled up our website, you gotta kind of search for it, like, should it somehow be
It should.
either in the name,
100%.
or, I mean, it almost like it should, like, then every time
One of its
anybody
own
comes to the
tab.
web, you go to the website and you see that right away, core
Yep.
knowledge, like, it
Yep.
pops out at you.
Right now, you have to click academics and then curriculum to get to
Right.
it.
Too much work.
Yep, it should be
Yeah.
right on the
To
link.
make my finger hurts, right?
All
Yeah, I
right.
think those are all great points, and I think that is, like I said, something that did come back in the parent surveys. I think it was around like 36% was like aware of like that their student was using core knowledge, but then it was like a much higher number. I think it was closer to like 80% that said that they were satisfied with like their students' academics, and I'm like, well, if you're satisfied with that, that's because it's core knowledge, but that connection's not happening.
Yep.
Right.
And
So yeah.
yeah, that's gonna be,
Good points.
Could be a
When you-
new newsletter, it could be a principal weekly update spread out throughout the year, maybe.
Yeah, it should
So-
be in the
Etc.
parent square meeting, it should be in the parent square too.
I mean, we're a couple of months from the board doing my evaluation, and I don't know if we'll have me do a self-evaluation, but I'm gonna put out there right now that I think that should be one of the goals the board sets for me for next year, is to have a communication plan to really have our families more invested in understanding of what makes our curriculum special.
It's very special. My son is in first grade, he's smarter than me today. So knowing that, now I understand why, I get it. Because it's such a rigorous, I mean, Mesopotamia in first
Yeah.
grade?
Yeah.
Come on, get out of here.
Yep, yep. Mesopotamia, that's great. That's cool.
And he can convey it. It's not like it's just words that they gave him. He understands what all these things mean, right? As well as just the words. It's crazy. I'm even more fired up now.
Are there any other questions I can ask about the visit or core knowledge or the report?
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Talent acquisition.
So Nicole was supposed to present on this, but she is home sick, so Megan and I'll let you stay up here, Megan, and help me work through it, but I can kind of talk through it a little bit. So Nicole was going to present just to share with you, because it really has been a big piece of what we focused on. As I've shared with the board before, I was much more concerned as we hit back in December and January with adding the quality staff that we need and great teachers we need to meet our expansion than I was with getting the students to come. And so we really worked hard on it, and a lot of friends, Nicole's worked really hard. Just want to take you through and share kind of where we're at in the process. We had 20 new positions, licensed positions. So it's mostly teachers, but it also includes counselor. I guess that's the only position that's not really a teacher when we talk about license right now. Sometimes you have school psychologists or other pieces. That doesn't include administration or special education paras or office staff or lunch staff, just 20 essentially teaching positions to fill. And 15 were due to our growth. 5 were due to staff members we know are not returning to positions next year for a variety of reasons. Some are moving out of state, family situations. One's going to be staying home with them, taking care of family. But to our knowledge, there's 5 staff members that are not returning. So that's got us a total of 20. Posted positions all everywhere we could, Ed Post, Minnesota School Jobs. Handshake is a big one with colleges now. And then we use Indeed for the non-licensed positions more at this point. Job fairs we've attended, this is largely me, although the virtual's been a number of people. But I went to the one in Fargo, in Northern Illinois, in the Black Hills, in La Crosse, in Northern Iowa, back to La Crosse again for a different one. We had the 3 online job fairs and another one upcoming next month. We had multiple people participate, principals participated in the virtual, special ed coordinator participated in the virtual in addition to me. All ways of kind of getting applicants and identifying quality applicants. So far, licensed positions we have filled 2nd grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade for special education. We have filled kindergarten first, one position each of kindergarten first, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th for regular education K-5. At 6-12, and really we're 6-10 next year, but we're going to use 6-12 because we want people to understand that we're going through high school for families that enroll, and when teachers apply, that you go back to high school within a few years. But we've hired 2 6th grade teachers, one with a focus in family and consumer science, one with a focus in math. We've hired, well, that's actually 8, 9, 10 math, not 7, 8, 9, and it's actually 8, 9, 10 science. And then 7th grade English language arts. Basically, if we keep going, we've also hired a K-5 art teacher, a 6-12 art teacher, a K-5 music teacher, a 6-12 music teacher, and a 6-12, well actually it's a K-12 counselor. Counselor will be K-12 for now until we break into 2. And the positions we have open in special education, we still have a kindergarten special education teacher, a 1st grade special education teacher, and we haven't really started working on the pairs yet. It's just a little early because people would be leaving other positions for a new one. It's a little easier to fill that when we get a little further into summer. And in regular education, the only 2 positions we still have open, so all of our basic, K-5 positions plus our, core positions in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are all filled at this point, unless other people resign between now and, the start of the school year. We still have a middle high school physical education position, which we made an offer today for that position. And we have 1 more K-5 specialist that we have posted. We have K-5 media specialist posted and K-5 music posted, but we can only hire 1 of them. We only need 1 of the 2. And we're, part of the reason for the media specialist is you're supposed to have somebody who has a license in your library. But we've kind of identified some other likely solutions for that. Talked to a few colleagues, one is the superintendent in the district, that their neighboring district does not have a media specialist, and the neighboring district contracts with their district, pays them for media specialists to come 5 days a year to review materials and make sure the materials are appropriate, because that's really the piece you're supposed to have a licensed person for, is to make sure that your materials policy is followed. And so we're going to explore some pieces there. It would really mean we have 3 music teachers if we hired that as music, 2 for K-5 and 1 for high school, which would also match what we're doing for physical education. But we feel like as we're growing into middle and high school, really building a strong music program is something that our families really value from what we hear from families. The ability for the students to be active, basically what they would have in K-5, if we have 2 PHYED teachers and 2 music teachers, they would have PHYED every 3rd day, music every 3rd day, and then for half the year they would have leadership on the 3rd day, and the other half of the year they'd have art on the 3rd day for their specialists. And so we're kind of leaning that direction in terms of where we're going to go, but we wanted to leave it open in case we found just the right person as a media specialist as opposed to the music. So, but we have come pretty far. Some other positions that are open. We are now, once we cross over 1,000 students, we're required to have a full-time licensed nurse. It doesn't have to be a 4-year RN, it can be a 2-year RN, registered nurse. But we are required, so that's going to be a new position we have to post. Yeah, so that's new, and we haven't really started interviewing for that yet. Assuming that the new space is acquired as we're moving forward, we'll need a receptionist for that space. And really with just under 100 students there next year, right around 100 students, the receptionist is also the health aide, is also the lunch super. I mean, it's going to be a position that has to wear really a lot of hats. And so, just because of the smaller at this point there. And then we still have one behavior support paraprofessional to hire. So, but really, I mean, we've hired 18 and I guess we've hired 17 of the 20 licensed positions we had open. And we just have that special ed, and assuming the gym offers, just really the music position. And so feeling really good about where we're at with license. And we'll start moving more into the non-licensed side of things soon. In terms of just to get an idea for the process, we really kind of had broken it down to 3 rounds and everything we've done. In the first round, that candidates that applied in February and that we interviewed in February, there were 48 applicants for positions. We interviewed 24 of them and hired 10. In March, there were 24 that applied, 11 that interviewed, and 4 hired. And then here in April, we have 28 that applied, 11 that we've interviewed, 3 that we've hired, and 1 more that we've offered. So a lot of work. And in the interviews, I mean, Nicole, HR specialist, who was going to do this presentation, she's been in almost all of them. Mr. Exner, Mr. Broderick, myself. When we've had teachers for second interviews, we've tried to have the teams involved. There's been a few cases where we identified people through job fairs or through different pieces where we need to move quickly. But I think in almost every case for the teachers so far, we've been able to involve people on the team in the process, at least in an online interview format. Number of teachers from out of state that we've hired. We've hired teachers from Florida. We have a second interview with another teacher from Florida. We have a teacher we offered the gym is currently teaching in, he's from Minnesota, but currently teaching in Korea. We have from Iowa. We hired a teacher position from Virginia. I'm trying to think of all the different states that we've had. Probably should have put that map up there. But we have found a lot of applicants, and that we kind of heard from some of the applicants coming from states where they feel like education isn't being supported as much right now. And Minnesota being viewed as a state where education is being supported. And we've had some applicants just coming this way for just that reason. Like they're just only looking at a few states that they have heard that are, based on the research, are supportive of education. Other cases, you've got family here or significant others here, or that kind of thing as a draw. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but been really successful. We feel really good. Good mixture too of, I'd say half of them are first year teachers, maybe a little bit less than half, and then we got a number that are a couple 2, 3 year teachers, and we've got a few that are more experienced with 10, 12, 13 years. So it's been a good mix. We couldn't afford to hire all experienced teachers within our budget, but we wanted to have a good mix where we're not having so many new teachers that are, that regardless of how good a teacher you're going to be that first year or 2 it's a learning experience and a challenge. So that's kind of the scoop of where we're at with that.
We need some more teachers with bird names.
With bird names?
Yes, we have a Nightingale, and last year we had Miss Finch. We need some more bird names.
We'll add that to our
requirements.
Our hiring rubric. Extra points are bird names.
Well, second year there's a lemon in second year. So you moved to
Fruits. Completely off topic, but kind of a funny story. So my last name is Poole, and when we were working at Athos in St. Cloud, it had just opened, it was brand new. And people were on the tour and they had written the teacher names on the classrooms, and they're giving these tours, and multiple people were like, but where's the swimming pool? And they're like, no, that's just a teacher. People were disappointed that the new building didn't have a swimming pool because it was on the map.
We'll have one here soon.
Yeah, someday. All right, board calendar for 25-26.
I think it was just brought up
Picking
that
a night.
potentially moving. So right now we have the 4th Thursday, which always in
Holidays.
November and December, you have to reschedule it a week early. Usually it interferes with the school carnival. It doesn't this year because there's 5 Thursdays, but, so there's talks of potentially moving it to the third Thursday or maybe Wednesday, but those you on the board, do you have a preference or? So we'll start this in July. Just something to think about. If you want to discuss that.
Just speaking for me personally, I like Thursday. Wednesdays don't work great for me.
I like Thursdays too, because I'm off, but I think the third one would work well because, yeah, it's Thanksgiving and Christmas,
Mhm.
and sometimes the carnival.
Wednesday would
Sometimes
be
trick or
awful
treat
for me
too.
too,
Yes,
actually,
trick or
so,
treat.
yeah. My wife is on call at the hospital, so she want the 4-year-old here too.
Yeah, I'm good with Thursdays, and it doesn't matter which Thursday of the month for me.
Yeah, Thursday works for me too. Plus, we have to make sure I know, because then we have to have the dance and donuts is always the next day.
Oh, that's right. We'll just have to move that up.
Right. Yeah,
So
Friday,
you said
whenever
that
our
Thursday
meeting is.
Thursday's good for me, yeah.
Okay.
Wednesday's the only
Oh.
one that's not.
I can check in with the other board members that aren't here, but if they're okay with it, we can move it to the third Thursday.
From the 4th?
Yeah, so,
Well, one thing that's nice about that is we're so far behind when we're looking at the finances. You know, later you get in the month, it's like you're almost spent the whole another month's worth of finances by the time you're looking at and reviewing. So I do think third is probably a little better in that regard. I also know that typically the companies like Creative Planning that we work with will complete their financial statements to look at all the schools they serve, and the later you are in the month, the lower the priority list you are to get done at the beginning of the month, even for me to have the information, because I need it for the board members. Although I will say they've done a pretty good job getting it pretty quick, but, you know, that is, you probably get the reports faster if your meetings are a little earlier in the month too.
and are the committees the second week usually?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That doesn't
correct.
matter, okay. All right, that's it.
You said starting June,
Yeah, well,
If-
it won't start till the new school calendar year, so July,
July.
unless we wanted to start next. I think we're okay. We'll start July. I'll get a printout of that and send it to you guys.
We talked about reviewing, Jonas and I talked about reviewing the board roles and responsibilities versus his roles and responsibilities. So thank you for printing this out again for us. When we first sat down, when Jonas took over, we created this document and kind of reviewed it as a board. And I think it's good as we move into hiring and decision-making season for next year to just do a quick review. So board decisions, as far as governance, we decide what our mission and vision is, the board structure, the bylaws, policies, and we oversee Jonas. So he is the only staffing person that we oversee and make decisions on. We take his advice in making those decisions. With him, we share decisions on the budget, enrollment targets and caps, and our strategic plans and goals. And then he makes decisions on, and we offer advice when needed, on staffing, evaluations, and employee management, systems and procedures, stakeholder communications, marketing, and academic programs. So just wanted to review that, and we have some new board members that weren't with us when we created this document. So just wanted to go over that again. Does anyone have, Jonas, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think part of the purpose of going over the document here is that there's some reflection and some discussion I've had with a few board members, you know, about these roles and if these are what we want and what they should be, and is this what we've been actually doing, and is there any concerns around, you know, the way these are actually playing out? Because it's one thing when you talk about it in theory in July, And then you get into real life situations and, there's what is considered when you go to the different trainings or when you go to the trainings you guys have done online to be board members, what they tell you is the right practices, and then there's what you legally can do as a board. And, your legal authority of board would be far more than what is recommended in terms of some of these pieces and decisions. So, so I think it's part of it's just reflecting and thinking about this, and I know Allison has a piece she wants to, I don't know if that's a concern or just let you speak for yourself with it, but.
Yeah, I think that there's been some leadership roles that have been moved around without maybe our knowledge. And I think that in terms of hiring staff members, I think that I'm fine with that. But when it comes to leadership, I think we need a little bit more input, or we need to have other members involved in the input of hiring and firing positions that are in leadership. So just making us more aware of, stuff that's going on prior to, or, us being a little bit more involved in the hiring and firing of the leadership roles. Just to make sure that there's a checks and balance. And there was a few staff members maybe that were even hired without staff members being involved in interview process, and just making sure that there's a little bit more like checks and balances when it comes to, we've been very fortunate with the employees that were hired in that regard, but even in other companies, there's always more people that are involved in those interviews, and just making sure that the best candidate is being presented from many different perspectives and not just one person's perspective.
I would say, from my perspective as a school leader, hiring, yes, I can see where you would want to know that there's, like, you just don't want to get into like nepotism and favoritism and friendship and et cetera. And like you said, you guys were blessed with the decisions that were made, but I can see where staff would want to make sure that like there's the application at least an interview where other people get an opportunity to meet that person as well before the decision is made. I think Jonas has the final decision. The hiring committee obviously makes a recommendation, and then your leaders make the final decision. But in firings, I don't think, my personal opinion, I don't think that the board should have any decision in that. And that we're not involved in their job performance. So being made aware of the changes, yes, but having a say in the changes, my personal thought is that that's not something that we should make decisions on.
I'll just share, I think this is really complicated, and I think Allison's concerns are legitimate concerns that you're sharing, for sure. And it's a valid perspective. I think it's really complicated in a variety of ways. On the firing side of things, employment management side of things, I think it's particularly challenging and nuanced in a charter school as opposed to a traditional district when there are teacher board members. So in other words, members of the administrative team that I'm supervising, that I have to make decisions about, are also supervising the teachers who are the board members. And so I think it makes it much more tricky to bring, there's also a piece in communicating with the board where if one board member knows something, every board member should know it. And so it makes it a lot more challenging to put that information out there when there might be concerns, and then the teacher board members then are taking direction from that person, and they're giving their evaluations. I think it gets really sticky, so I think that's my concern there. My concern is I do think that there is also nuance to the hiring process. I think generally a process where you involve people, get input, get diverse perspectives on who the school leadership is good practice as a general rule, but I don't think it's always the best way to do it. And it's a fine line. I see it as a fine line between when you have an open position and you kind of follow a pretty common process, but there's also a piece of a fine line between what, as we talk about, cronyism or nepotism, which is a legitimate concern in charter schools. And I mean, I'll just put it out there. I recruited somebody last summer for our elementary position that I've known for a long time, right? And I recruited him because I know his work, I knew how talented he was, I knew what a great fit he was for the position. And did not have an interview committee or a whole lot of people bring input. And I met with each board member about that ahead of time, and we did post the position and consider applicants, as of course you're legally required to. But we met with board members ahead of time, and there are times when if you're going to try and go out and recruit the best talent, having that big process where you come in front of a committee, you're not going to get those same people to apply or be involved in the process. It's hard as a leader, and it's a big issue for even superintendent hiring, where once you put your name out there in the process and you go to interview, it inevitably gets back to the schools that people are coming from. And they don't want to do, a lot of people will not want to do that without really kind of knowing they're probably going to get the job, because now it makes it really hard for them to leave where they're at. And so there are times when you have an opportunity, in the fact that you know somebody and know their skills to bring to the table, it's kind of a sure thing as opposed to trying to project from an interview. And I think it just really depends on the situation. And I do think one of the strengths I bring to this role, with many weaknesses I'm sure you can point out, is I do have a pretty strong network of people to draw from. And so I'm concerned about having a rigid policy that it's always this way, or you know, I feel like as a board you should judge me on, to the people I hire, are they, you know, if I do go out and recruit somebody for a position, they better be really good, and they better be, you know, highly qualified for the position. And I don't think that would always be the case, you know, or usually be the case. But I'm concerned about limiting the ability to go out and do that in a way where, hey, we have a chance to get somebody who could really give a benefit to our school, that whose work maybe I know or somebody on our team knows. And I just don't think the process is always the same in every situation. So, that said.
And I would say that a high-profile position would expect there to be an interview panel. They would probably assume that there's going to be more than just one person that's interviewing them, or there's leaders in the school that are also there, and I think they'd be shocked if there wasn't.
It's a nuanced discussion. And her perspective, Allison's perspective, is not wrong. I'm not, right? And I think the piece here is, I think the board, I mean, in 2 months you'll evaluate me on my overall job performance, and one of the categories that you, I'm sure, evaluate is on personnel management, and including all these pieces. And it's, I think, the most important part of my job. Having the right teachers in front of the kids, having the right leaders in the building is the most important thing we do, and I take it very, very seriously. So, I don't know, I just, that's, I don't know where you go from there. We don't have a board policy specifically about that, and that's certainly something that could happen. I worry about limiting the flexibility, but yet I also understand the concern of, you don't want any one person having, too much authority to just do whatever, just go bring my best friend in or something, that isn't qualified for the job. Yeah, you probably should, if I'm doing that, you probably should not be keeping me in my role, So I think it's nuanced, and that's, I guess, my piece, and I feel like, I told, when we had some conversations, one of the things I said when I was interviewed for the position, that only 2 of the people in the room were on the board last year, and I was, but the question came up, what if the board makes a decision you disagree with? And I guess my piece is we should be able to disagree, talk things through, and once the decision's made, we all accept it and move forward. And it's a process. So I'll accept direction from the board, but I don't know.
It sounds like, school leader positions, kind of like teachers, it's not like there's a plethora of candidates, right? Is that also a struggle? Or is it just mostly tied to the whole, like you said, where it's like, I don't want to publicly put my hat in the ring because now where I'm at, I'm going to be...
It depends.
Yeah.
There's typically plenty of applicants.
Okay.
Although I will say, because we pay far less on the administrative side than a traditional school district would, there can be limitations on the experience level of candidates. And yes, typically, but not always, if you apply for a principal job, assistant principal job, in those situations, you're going to expect to go in front of a panel. That is normally the case, but not always the case. There's also plenty of examples of some really successful school districts that go out and really recruit people and kind of, and do that. And I've seen that in a number of places, and I just think you limit yourself if we're saying that's always our practice.
Hard and fast rarely works. Hard and fast rarely works in any corporate or any other scenario, but the word that you use that I think is key to this whole conversation is nuance. I'm sure Allison's not saying for every position we need to have a gauntlet, right? And I'm sure you're also not saying I'm just going to bring in my guys, right? So it's a nuanced type of thing, and it's based on cases as well, And I've never been around a whole process of any kind of change in a company that didn't have little nuancey pieces of it, right, that go along with the process, but sometimes you just kind of bend it slightly or whatever, depending on the nature of it, right? So that's just my thought on it. I think we're on the right. I think we're doing the best we can with what we had to work with. And nuance is the key word in my opinion.
If memory serves, timeline was a factor?
It was. Yeah. And last summer it was a little bit into, I didn't start till July, but that wasn't the main factor. I could have, for me, I felt like we had somebody really talented that I was working on for weeks to try and get to, and it was, I felt a long shot to get him in the first place, and now to get him and then try and go through an interview process, I don't know that he would have done that. And we may have lost out on somebody in that situation. And as a general rule, I think having input from a variety of people can only be helpful as a general rule, but I just think it's not always the best way to do things, and there's times where you be less likely to end up with the best candidate, the right person, if you're.
I guess as far as this grid, I don't think as a board we should be involved in that interview process or the choosing process, but you should try to make a good faith effort to involve others on the team and try to be as ahead of the game as you can in, situations obviously come up at last minute, but try to stick to the usual process as much as possible. But me as a nurse in my world is way different than the school world. I'm not going to be a good person to make any decisions as to who should be in these.
Well, I don't think that's what Allison's saying. She's saying that teachers and people in the school, and we should get different perspectives on input, ultimately in the process, and it shouldn't just be me going out and making a decision by myself. And I think as a general practice, yes, but like I said, I think if that was what we had in place last summer, I don't think we'd have the amazing elementary principal we have right now. And so I hate to be limited in that way.
I think let's table it for next meeting. I will personally go look at other schools and see if they have anything in writing for hiring practices, and I'll bring some examples of what I can find.
And a question I would have too is more nuance. Are we talking about principal positions? Are we talking about assistant principal positions? Are we talking about
Because at this
deans?
point, Jonas has a person that he's looking to hire.
For
assistant.
Person, yeah, I don't know if we'll accept or not, but that, in terms of timing with the next meeting, and part of the board's direction can be you need to wait until we have this next meeting before you. Right now, and this is part of it too, is, at first, yes, there's somebody I've been recruiting to try and get to come, but somebody I think is a long shot. And if that person didn't, then it would be, kind of wide open. But that said, if the board feels like we should hold off on that piece until after the next meeting, I can certainly do that. The other piece is that's an assistant. Right now, the plan is next year. So this year we had essentially 3 principals and a dean of students. And the plan restructuring within was same cost or less within our budget is to have for next year 2 principals and 2 assistant principals. So same number of people, but 2 assistant principals, 2 principals as opposed to 3 principals and a dean. That probably is a 1-year model, 1 to 2 year model until we grow and we need to have a separate person for upper grades. It's just kind of weird situation next year. You're going to have 4 classes across the street, where that's really not a full-time principal position, where we feel like we can do that with some other duties and so on and so forth. So that's the plan. So right now the plan would be to post an assistant principal position, and yeah. So.
So as a board, do we want to do we need, not a formal vote, but can we take an informal vote of, like, do we think that these assistant principal positions need to be posted, allow applicants, and at least have 1 round of interviews for all qualified applicants, or your top whatever you would normally do, or do we want to give Jonas the go-ahead to make that decision?
Point of clarification, are you consulting Ben or Patrick when you're trying to recruit this person? So
Yes.
So it's not.
And an HR person, and I would also remind board members too that were here last summer, I didn't just unilaterally do that. I did go talk to each of the board members beforehand, tell them what I was thinking about doing and why that process, why I felt like that's what we needed to do at that time. So I mean, I was aware of, I think that's worth noting too.
So what we're talking about right now isn't you going solo, it's talking about whether or not it's posted and those
Well,
you consult with.
Well, it needs to be posted before we make any decisions. So right now.
Okay, but whether you interview multiple people or you guys focus
If
on.
there's one that stands out, that's the candidate we want. I honestly, I think, I mean, it is nuanced. I think that there's, okay, I guess I'll just speak my truth. My truth is I think that right now we've done a really good job hiring and put together a really good administrative team. And I would ask the board to trust my judgment until I lose that trust with a hire. And in how we approach it. And what I'll end up, what process we'll end up using, really that should fall under my domain with everything that's good practice. Now the board might say that the way I'm going about it isn't good practice and put that in my evaluation and say that that's something you need to work on for next year, but I don't know that it's within what way boards should operate for the board to, I think to express concern and ask me to pause and think about it and so on and so forth, but.
I think it's absurd that you wouldn't give an interview to a person and then you would just hire them. Even in a position, even in the teacher positions, they all had to sit in front of a panel of people and have an interview as a teacher. So as a teacher, I have to sit in front of a board of peers that I have to interview in front of, but as a leader, I wouldn't.
Well, and I would argue that in all kinds of fields, when people have a track record and you know their work, that is not at all uncommon that you're going out to recruit. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't be an interview. It might be an interview with me and the two principals that would be working with the person.
But it's not fair as a teacher who's being evaluated by a leader who I could lose my job by if I don't know the person.
But that would require that all the teachers would be
No,
evaluated.
right.
Right,
But
so,
when Kathy hired other principals, she was also having other people from the teams in a panel and interviewing candidates for the position. And those teachers had a say in what, and then she made the final decision. And that's all I'm asking. I'm just asking that these people are going through an interview process and that they be interviewed by a few select people, whoever Jonas decides to be in that. But I think that we should have levels of people.
If that's really all we're asking, I can commit to that.
So just
I could-
having a few teachers
yeah.
in and making that decision, even if it's just one candidate, they could either say, no, Jonas, we're not, but at least somebody else has a voice.
Right. But even if the people said, we don't think that's the right person, it's still ultimately
It's still-
advisory,
it's
it's
still-
still a call.
because another thing is the teacher, and I can understand your point on that too, how the teachers have to go through a gauntlet. Well, the teacher technically is the most important move in this whole building.
100%.
Right?
We'll
But
all
the
agree with that.
positions, we're talking about principals and stuff like that, that's more political than it is.
But that political can
Yeah, I know,
get
it
those
could
good
be.
teachers burned.
Absolutely, so.
I understand your
Yeah,
concern.
I get, like I said, it's very nuanced, I love it. The whole process of it right now, in my mind, is like, this is a group of people trying to elevate the process here. And that's beautiful.
And I think part of it too is so often you have an interview process, people that you haven't worked with before, and people can fool you in an interview.
Oh, yeah.
And the advantage of, like, it's a fine line. And I totally acknowledge it's a fine line between cronyism, where you're going and getting people because you know them and like them, and going and getting people because you know their work and you're not just projecting what they're going to do based on an interview, but you've seen them in action over time and know in my role. And that can be hard, and some people don't necessarily, that are the best people, don't always interview well, the right candidates. And that's the piece about it that I see as the nuanced part of it.
Well, knowing that we as the teachers especially would have an eyeball on you as you move forward,
Yeah.
then that means that you automatically have to be really, really clear that person you're bringing to the table, if you're going to do it
Yep.
a particular way that may not.
100%. And I said that to each of the board members when we met in July. I said, I know, and those of you, Joe, Carly, and Shelby, hopefully you'll remember this, the board. I said, I know that if I go in, I don't have a big process and interview panel and rounds of interviews and do this, and the teachers don't think this is the right person, a high quality person, I will lose all kinds of credibility. I know that, and I wouldn't do it unless I was highly, highly, highly confident in the person and that was going to be perceived that way.
And in that position that you're in, you're only as good as your last move.
Yep. And so I get it. I mean, again, I knew that going in, and I think that it's played out well. But yeah. So, but if all we're asking for is that, hey, we're going to have at least a handful of teachers involved, even if we only interview one person, and make sure that they at least can share what concerns they have, I can commit to that. That's.
Is there a hiring team set in place already?
No. No, we haven't even posted a position yet.
Right.
I mean, but it would be possible that we would hire the position before the next board meeting, potentially, which is why the discussion needed to take place now.
Yeah.
We normally have like a set, this is our hiring committee, that's always kind of our hiring
Yeah.
committee for the school year.
Well, no, different
based on-
Change
positions.
it based on
And
positions.
I've seen it done so many different ways.
Yeah.
Seen
Well,
it
I
done some-
nominate Allison to definitely be on the,
I mean, if this is what it takes, or
Right.
if I
Yeah.
need to sign up to be on the committee because I
Yeah.
fought so hard for it, then so be it, I'll figure it out.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that we need to be careful for Jonas. We don't need our parents, we don't need our teachers, we don't need our staff members to come at Jonas and say,
Right.
you did this and you
Right.
didn't get approval of anybody else.
Right.
Because they're gonna be upset and they're gonna want
that
more.
keeps him from being the 100%
Right.
lightning rod.
And we don't need his name in the papers saying that charter schools are hiring people without anybody else's input.
Right.
That's true.
And so far, we have, you've done it once,
Mhm.
and we don't want that, our name to be tarnished because of that. And I know that sometimes there's things that other charter schools are doing, they think it was fine, but now all of a sudden their name is in the paper. So I just I wanna make sure that we're safeguarding ourselves.
Agreed.
Well, it sounds like if we have that panel, or departments and concerns and have that input, but then so following even this chart, like you said at the end, you have that final say
Well,
with
and that's all
advice
Allison.
from the board.
That's
what she's
Allison,
getting at,
but
it sounds like.
I think the piece of the puzzle is, that makes me a little more comfortable is when she said, even if you only interview one or two candidates, and it's just a few teachers, if there's a right fit that I've been going, really, in that situation that we had, and that.
I think that situation was unique.
Yeah,
to
but in a way,
little bit.
but to Allison's concern, I mean, I shared with her that there's somebody I've been recruiting for the assistant principal position.
Yeah.
Right? And not that, there's not that many people out there that I would have at that, that much confidence that I would,
Right.
myself on the line for. But, so I mean, her concern is, yes, it's not totally unique. I also don't believe I've always felt like one of the things that I hated as a teacher, when I was a teacher, was when you would have this whole committee to make the decisions supposedly, and it felt like the principal had already made up his mind already before going into the process, and it was all for show, right? I don't want to waste people, like, I think.
Waste other people's
But at
time.
least if you're saying it's advisory going in and making it clear, and I've seen it different ways. I mean, it's an advisory process normally, but sometimes they'll take a vote with the committee, and the committee will basically decide. Or the committee will decide which two to forward to the superintendent to make a decision. And, I mean, my ability to be an effective leader is subject to the teachers trusting the decisions and process and judgment. And I'm not gonna go, all authoritarian every time this is what we're doing, and not get input. But I just think that there are some reasons and some times, and I do think one of the strengths is, having done this a long time, I have quite a few different places. I have a pretty strong network, and I've seen people that have done really good work that I know are worth going out and going after. And sometimes those people can be, you have a chance to get them, but maybe they're not gonna be all, it's a hard sell, and they don't know if they're gonna do it. Well, I'm not gonna go through that whole interview process, and I'm happy where I'm at. And, and that's where, you lose the ability to potentially steal some really strong people that way would be my only concern. But
If they want it, they'll talk to people.
Okay.
But I can commit to at least that much.
Okay.
And good discussion. And like I said, I present a perspective, and Allison has a different perspective, but I think it's a really healthy discussion, and I don't think either perspective is wrong. I think there's different ways of looking at things, and that's why people serve on a board, so they can have a voice and have input, and I want to value the input of the board too. So, I appreciate you stand up for what you think is the best way to do things and what's right for our school, and I think there's a middle ground there.
Everybody good with that? All right. Good to move on. Our next point on the agenda is our consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed. Consent agenda items are as follows: the approval of our March 27th, 2025 meeting minutes, the approval of our April personnel updates. Is there anything that anyone would like removed?
Didn't we have to do that at the top?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
were
it's already-
before. Nobody wanted to
Nobody
move
already.
anything.
Oh,
before we
perfect.
here,
Got
so we're
it.
good.
Beautiful. All right, Cassidy.
William Beck,
Aye.
Allison Pitt,
Aye.
Shelby Poole,
Aye.
Greg Sand,
Aye.
Carla Sherrill,
Aye.
Joe Valentine.
Aye.
Consent agenda carries. We will move on to our action items. We have several special education contracts to approve. So the motion would be to approve all of our special education contracts: Designs for Learning for Director of Special Education and School Psychologist, School Audiology Services, Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services, Purchase of Service Agreements for our ASD consultant, DAPE, OT, Licensed School Nurse, Speech and Language, Strategic Staffing Services for an ASD, DCD, and EBD teachers.
So, I just had a question.
Yes.
Has our lawyer looked at these contracts?
That's not something I've ever done before.
I don't think so, because they're all like existing contracts that we have.
They're all
They're
existing.
renewals.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
It's a good question. That's not something that,
Some of them say like they're not, so like strategic staffing has us holding them harmless from any injury or damage, just blanket statement. And then the DAPE one I liked, it said, except to the extent that such liability is caused by negligence or tortious act or omission. Then, but, I mean, they just figured cover us legally, but if these are, like, already looked at contracts that
Well, they're renewals, so
are renewing,
hope
then
they would be.
nothing's changing.
yeah.
The only change in the contracts is for the ASC, DCD, and EBD teacher. They raised their rates from 75 to 78. We've been working with them for 10 years. Otherwise, they all are renewal that we've approved, and Paula Kirkner, the special education director, overviewed all these too.
She did.
Mhm. Yes, oh, yeah.
But I don't think a lawyer is just.
No, but yes, but she did as a special ed director. That's,
Excuse me, is it possible that I be using what's required for that? I have to pick up my son at 8 o'clock.
we still have a quorum, so.
Good.
Yeah.
We still have a quorum.
If you have to vote for anything, I say yes. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night, Greg.
We just need a second on that one. If we want. We just need a second.
Second.
All right, there has been a motion and a second to approve the special education contracts listed. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Approve the CKC Good Food Service contract. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Did you say we should do further discussion before? No, it comes
No,
after.
after.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like, second guessing myself now. Discussion around the good food service contract?
Question on that too.
Okay.
So it said something like you can only do this up to 5 times. Is this a renewal and you can only renew it up to 5 times and you start from fresh? Or if we're only doing these 1-year things after we hit 5 years, are we?
It's up at the top, it's they're renewed up to 4 times, total of 5 years.
But I think we're required to go out for bids every 3 by the state. So that might be their policy, but no, this is the state. Oh, well, maybe that represents an increase then, because it used to be every 3 years you had to do them.
Well, contract may be renewed a maximum of 4 times. Like, period. Like, after we renew it 4 times, are we not allowed to use CKC?
No, we have to get bids.
A bid.
Bids.
You
Yeah.
have to go out for
Okay.
bids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other companies.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I'm good with this.
Which by the way, just so you all know, we've been working to be getting bids for more frequently than we have in the past. We did a request for proposal for transportation, which will be next month. We've been paying attention to that. We did a request for proposal. Ben did a request for proposal in the fall for our heating, air conditioning, and ventilation, but that's one thing we've been trying to tighten up so that we're making sure we're getting the best prices. And so, just so you know, that's very much on our radar.
Has the food improved? I know there is a lot of like,
I'm not eating it.
I haven't seen as many complaints.
no.
I would say there's still too much prepackaged
Yes.
junk.
Well, and all I can say is I've worked with about 4 different food companies now, and every time the families aren't happy and we change, they do a great job in the show, pony show, to make a change and make it look real good. And then you change and the next one ends up being worse than the one before.
Yeah.
So,
And I
and then
think,
there's always the unknown of, if nothing else, they're getting our food here reliably.
Yeah.
We're never having days where we all of a sudden don't have food delivered.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
there's just a risk with the change and you don't know on some of those things.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying necessarily change companies, but what they showed us when, you know, the very first year that we had this food, what they showed us on back to school night, like, bring it.
Yeah.
That's what you showed us,
Where's
you need to
that?
bring it,
Yeah.
every day.
And I'm about 4 for 4 with that same experience with 4
Mm-hmm.
different companies. So that's my only like concern with.
yeah.
Yeah.
And having worked in schools where we had our own kitchen and we prepared our own food, like you have so much more options to do fresh things, whereas when you're getting it shipped in, like it has to stay a certain temperature, it has to stay, and like when you're transporting, like all of those things play into that, and so then prepackaged stuff becomes.
And we don't have a kitchen for that, like our kitchen is big, but we don't have, like, I'm asking more than I'm saying,
No,
right?
we don't.
We don't.
Okay.
We don't. I will say, to, referencing the same friend, that's the same friend I referenced about, I don't remember what I referenced about before, about the media center, the library. I was sharing with him about our food service, and he's gonna come out and visit us next week and share some of his learnings around that too. And at some point,
Do they have a kitchen there?
well, they do have a kitchen. They have a caterer, but they have a kitchen, so the caterer brings in and prepares there. But every charter school I've ever heard of and know loses money on their food service.
Mhm.
And he indicated that every traditional district he works with makes money on their food service. So I want to try and figure out where the gap is, and if at some point, I mean, we're getting, you get to an economy of scale where, just like we talked about with busing in the fall, like you get this, as much as we're growing, getting to a place where you're big enough where you financially, in the long run, you might be a lot better off doing it yourself.
Right.
But you gotta have the capacity to do it, the expertise, and usually there's an investment on the front end that is hard to get started.
Yeah,
You
it would
know,
be the equipment in the
And
kitchen.
maybe building a kitchen.
Yeah.
And then to do it, you gotta make sure you have the right people with the expertise to do it well.
But we have like equipment in that kitchen that's super expensive that I don't know if we're
Yep.
using to the full capacity either. Like the
Yep.
refrigerators, the
It's-
refrigeration
it-
systems
I feel like
are
it's
top of the line.
I feel like it's something worth researching. I think we need to get to a place where we're stable enrollment and not
Sure.
growing before we start. That's kind of the conclusion I came to on the transportation. We could really be a lot better off long run doing it, but not if we don't do it well. And while we're in such a rapid growth phase, I think it would be a big risk in terms of doing it well.
It might be easier to get lunch ladies than bus drivers.
Yes.
Just how hard it is to get bus drivers even for a field trip,
Yep.
so.
Yeah. But anyways, so, that, more to come, but I would say we're at right now. We should
Hopefully
plan
we
this.
can renew it 4 times and then we'll have a better plan.
And there we go.
By the 4th time.
A someday.
Someday.
All right, any other discussion?
No.
All right.
Did we motion?
We did, we motioned in
Motion
second.
second, you
Yeah.
made a comment
Okay.
already.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next is the revision to the employee handbook, which hopefully everyone had a chance to look over. Allowing people to roll over up to 5 days with a maximum of 20 accumulated.
So currently, no one rolls over anything, is that accurate?
Correct.
And
Use it or lose
it gets,
So the-
lose it, not even paid out?
Yeah, right?
No, you get paid,
You
you
get
get
paid
5
out
days
for
paid
5.
out, I
You
think you're a
can
teacher.
get up to 5 days. So here's the
How much do you
challenge.
earn a year?
What?
How many PTO days do you earn?
10, which is on the low end. Districts are usually between 10 to 12 is kind of more than average. I mean, the district I worked in, the teacher for a long time was 10 also. 10's not unusual, but it's the lower end of the normal range. But one of the issues is a lot of teachers have really good attendance. They don't like to be out. It's harder to have a sub, and so now you got 9 days left in April or May, and you're only gonna get paid for 5 of them.
So you
They
use
start
them.
using them or losing them. And we have found this year, and what I understand it's been the case pretty much every year, we having a lot of people out, and it's not ideal for students. Yeah, I don't blame teachers at all, if you're gonna lose the days, but it's hard to fill those. And so the immediate driver of this was, number one, trying to encourage staff members to maybe not use them all. They can take their 5 and roll 2 more over, or 3 more over instead of using those days. And so that was kind of the short-term driver of it for me, was to try and maybe not have quite as many people out this spring. The other piece, though, is I think it's just another teacher retention type piece.
Absolutely.
Particularly one area in addition to, we're making progress with salaries, but particularly teachers that go out maternity leaves and they can't roll days over at all. And so now they get 10 days to use the year they have maternity leave, and they probably end up using 3 or 4 because they have morning sickness or doctor appointments and whatever. And so you get paid for 5 or 6 days, and then you're on short-term disability making half of what you would get if that. And it's really, really, and so if you can at least pay them for
Yeah.
4 weeks, or, I just think it's a
I'm
more of a
over it.
cost to the school, but it's to me, it's retention and teacher being happy and supporting our teachers better.
Absolutely.
So that's where it came from, and the timing of it and just wanting to do it quickly was about trying to maybe encourage people not to use some days that maybe they would use this spring.
Mhm.
And so that's where it came from.
Okay.
All right. I made a motion to revise. Did anyone second it?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Close enrollment for this school year, for the 2024-2025 school year. Jonas, anything you want to say other than that before we make a
Yeah,
motion?
I mean, the reason to close at this point is we're very close to our capacity anyways, but there theoretically there's some room in a few different classrooms. But our place is really tight right now, as we've talked about, our systems around transportation and driveline and those pieces and making those be smooth. And it's really hard to add students in this late in the year, just in terms of classroom environment and so I think it's just in the best interest of our school to.
Would parents make the decision to enroll now so that they could automatically be enrolled? So that would be the move.
I've had a couple people trying to do that.
I see. But that wouldn't be any benefit to the teachers or the classrooms to enroll.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Well, and it also runs the risk of putting us, with the students we already accept, we're already,
They're
in some
graded
cases, we're already
less.
2 over per class for the
Right.
grade, and now you have 3 or 4 families do that, and now we might be stuck where teachers are not happy with us, me in the fall, because we have
Right.
It's
class
not
that's
good
supposed to be
enough
back at
for the
20.
student either. It's like,
Right,
so-
no, that's really not very fair to the
It-
student coming
yes.
in.
Yeah, it's not very.
Generally, I've been at other schools where they don't allow students to enroll at a certain time anyways. Like, it's like, it's not like a school rule, it's like a rule. Like, you can't enroll after like May something, but I guess right now we're at April, so.
Well, it's one of the,
Closing.
it's better for kids, for all kids and everybody to close now.
Yeah,
When you're in a situation in a charter school that really needs to grow your enrollment, if you don't enroll the student that's looking in April or May, they go somewhere else and you don't get them for next year.
right.
We are fortunate in a place right now where we're such good shape enrollment-wise
Yeah.
that we don't have to consider that anymore. We can just look at what's best, and it's really be best to close it that way.
So I'll make a motion to close enrollment for the 24-25 school year.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Revise our calendar to change June 5th to a half-day for 7th through 9th graders.
For this year?
This year.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
It's really,
Still meet our
it was really an
minutes?
oversight not doing it in the first place. It's always been what we had in the past.
Yep.
It was an oversight not having it on there in the first place is the gist of it. And the reasons for it always being that way in the past.
So typically what we do is we have field day for K through 6, the June 4th, and it's their last day of school, and that's a full day of activity. And then the following day, we typically only have our middle and our upper, so in this case, it's 7 through 9, and we go through their field day, and then that's followed typically by 8th grade graduation. And so what we've done in the years past is we've made that a half day. So it's only 7 through 9 in our buildings. They're here for a half day, they go home, and then the ones that are doing graduation get ready at home and then return. And so it just so happened that it wasn't marked that way on this year's calendar. I would like to return it to that aspect to kind of give those older students, who are going for that additional time.
Chance to freshen up.
Yeah.
And it's, middle school, high school is supposed to have extra hours, isn't it? Like, that's why we've given them some half days that are online or whatever.
Yeah,
So
they've
they've
done some-
already met their.
They've done some flex days.
Days,
This wouldn't,
yeah.
this wouldn't impact that,
Yeah.
that piece. And, you know, if it gives us a good time to have a concentrated last day, those of you that have done full last days without a full range of activities know that sometimes that can be a very
Yep.
challenging time. So it's a good time to concentrate our efforts on that last day and make sure that.
Are they here long enough for lunch, or do they go home
Yep,
before?
they'll be
lunch?
here long enough to serve lunch, because we don't have any elementary that day. So we might move up their lunchtime from when it normally is. But essentially, for this case, it's 5 classes of students. It's 2 7th, 2 8th, and 1 9th.
And Monarch's available?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So,
All right, I'll make a motion to revise the school calendar to change June 5th of 2025 to a half-day for 7th through 9th grade.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Excuse me. All right, board communication, future agenda items. Just be thinking, when are appointments for roles again, Cassie? June? July?
Appointments are June. They get appointed in June and then they seat.
So with Jolene leaving, we'll need a secretary, and if I've said before.
Treasurer too, because.
Treasurer, because Mike's the treasurer. Yeah, there we go, yeah.
So you do that in June or you do that in July?
I think we do that in July.
Because that's an organizational meeting right after the people take.
And take
There's
new
seats,
people,
so-
yep,
Yeah, I
yep.
think it's July.
But be thinking about that if anyone is interested in running for nominating, volunteering, however you want to look at it for seats. We're going to lose 2/3.
Yeah, and we need a governance chair.
Yeah. Joe, is that a nod of like, yep, I'm on that?
We're talking about it.
All right. All right, so our next regular board meeting will be held here on Thursday, May 22nd at 5:30 PM. And I would make a motion to adjourn. It's been a motion and a second. Any other conversation? All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.